Hi, my name is Alex Kerska, and I got a chance to interview a young agnostic male in my area. This documentary will start off with a brief history of agnosticism, both in general and in relation to my interview subject. We will also discuss his experiences due to his beliefs in the United States, as well as his views on specific topics. We're going to talk about gender, clergy, salvation, practices, ethics, sexual orientation, and homosexuality, as well as struggles that he has had in the United States. Finally, we'll wrap up the documentary with some final thoughts on what I, the interviewer, discovered about agnosticism and religion in the United States. Alfredo Marron is a 21-year-old active-duty U.S. Navy sailor currently stationed on Diego Garcia, a Navy base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Marron is originally from Orlando, Florida, and other than being in the middle of an ocean and an isolated area, he's got something that's a little different than the traditional 21-year-old American male. Marron identifies as agnostic, a term that comes with some stigma in certain parts of the world, including the United States. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines agnostic as a person who holds the view that any ultimate reality such as God is unknown and probably unknowable. Although Marron has a slightly different, more simple answer when asked the same question. What do you define agnosticism as?
I would believe agnostic means you're open to the idea that there could be a higher power, but you're also open to the idea of the opposite. So you're kind of just sitting in the middle, just content. That's what I would say.
Marron admits that it was actually an older sibling that got him thinking about being agnostic. At what point did you discover you might be agnostic?
I think it was when my older sister, she's a year older than me, so she was always more progressive and stuff, so I just kind of followed her lead. So when I was 13 or 14, she was telling my parents oh, I don't believe in God, I'm atheist. I'm like, that's hardcore. I didn't even know that was an option. You can just say that. So I looked up to her in terms of my ideals.
That inspiration from his sister allowed Marron to start questioning his parents' religion of Christianity as well as other religions around the world.
My parents aren't as religious. They say they are, but they're not practicing. So I don't see them practicing any sort of religion, go to church or anything, only for maybe Easter and typical holidays like that. I remember going as a kid and dressing up and wearing the formal attire and everything. But I know my grandmother, she is pretty religious. I see her with she has candles and with Jesus' face on it and on the wall and everything. So it's who's to say that there is a Jesus Christ, or who's to say that Muslims are wrong about their God or Jewish people are wrong about their God? You guys are saying everybody else is wrong.
This frustration with religious groups and their egos is not just a viewpoint of Marron. Clarence Darrow, a famous lawyer and author, in his book Why I Am an Agnostic, explains, "I feel that whether the universe had an origin, and if it had, what the origin is will never be known by man." Darrow continues this argument while focusing on Christianity, saying that the books of the Bible were, quote, written by many people at many different times and no one knows the identity of any author. Darrow, Marron, and other agnostics aren't necessarily saying that these religions are wrong or right, but are in the belief that we will never know, and that's okay. Marron's experiences in the U.S. as an agnostic were not what you'd expect for someone with a viewpoint that is so unopinionated.
It just feels taboo to say that you're anything else than what the majority is. So
you felt like an outsider being agnostic compared to peers.
In a way. You almost feel a type of guilt, almost.
Being in the military, where prayer and God is a main theme in day-to-day work, Marron says it can be hard to speak up or tell leadership that maybe not everyone in the room believes the same way as them.
I kind of just go with emotions, honestly. They're let us pray. And then we all bow our heads back in boot camp. I just bow my head, don't really think of anything. I just blank out for a little bit. And I don't see it either way. I just see it as it is what it is. I kind of let it roll off my back. But also I'm kind of what am I going to do? It's mainly, I think, based off tradition and stuff.
Although Marron also admits that having these times for prayer and religious celebration is beneficial for those who practice, especially in a military environment that can be hard on some people.
People that are religious, they probably feel some sort of comfort, in the military being religious, and then having people pray and bow their heads during certain ceremonies and stuff. And then people who aren't religious or are of a different religion, it's just, like I said, going through the motions. It's not something that I feel we need to change just because, like I said, it's just tradition at this point. It's just, you do what you got to do.
Most day-to-day topics that we see argued between religions and in politics are kind of answered with the same notion from Marron and agnostics. Don't hurt anyone else and you're fine. This was evident when Marron was asked about the first topic, gender roles. In your agnosticism, what do you think about gender roles or roles that men and women should have like in a household or in a family?
I don't think there should be any gender roles. I do think biologically that men are more capable in terms of like physical like capabilities, so like there is a role for that. But in terms of like whether a guy can be like a stay-at-home dad or like a wife has to do the same, or it shouldn't matter.
This is without a doubt much different than many other religions across the globe. According to the Pew Research Center, in nearly all countries surveyed, a majority of Muslims say that a wife should always obey her husband. Specific gender roles are not just a Middle Eastern viewpoint either. The Wells Lutheran Church, practiced by many Americans, including Mr. Don Zitlow, the founder and CEO of Quick Trip, on their own website states that women may participate in offices and activities of the public ministry, except where that work involves authority over men. Women may not serve as pastors nor participate in assemblies of the church in ways that exercise authority over men. You have to wonder if statements and practices like these are pushing people from being religious and becoming agnostic like Marron has. Moving on to questions about clergy and religious leadership, Marron stood his ground about kind of being in the middle.
I don't really have an opinion on clergies, monks, or priests or anything like that. Believe what you want to believe, hold whatever title you want to hold, that's fine. Just try not to push that on other people.
Don't force it on others.
Yeah.
Agnosticism is kind of an individual religion with not much group practice or churches, so clearly there's no need for a rabbi, bishop, or a pope. Next, and for some, the most well-known or controversial about agnosticism, Marron was asked about his opinions on salvation and what happens after death.
Without further proof of there being a God, I would say there is no salvation. We are what we choose to be right now in this life. So unless it's proven otherwise, I would say just be the best person you can be, like in this moment.
What kind of has led you to that opinion?
I mean, that would be more like an atheist answer. But what I'm saying is, like, we don't know that. So if there is something, then you better be the best you can be either way. So just try to be the best person to make it to the afterlife, or just to affect people positively on this earth right now.
This is also likely an appealing and admirable viewpoint of agnosticism. While other religions argue if heaven is real and how to get there, agnostics are focused on the now and are okay with the fact that we don't really know for certain. The next question was about practice. What do agnostics do to practice their viewpoint or practice their belief? The answer came as more of an individual answer, not necessarily focused on agnosticism. And Marron said although he doesn't pray or try to talk to God, he admits that a practice that brings him inner peace is going out in nature.
I think just being with nature kind of puts me in the moment. Like if I'm in my head, I think if I go for a walk or I go take a hiking trail or something, or if I go out by the beach with the waves in the water sometimes, like I remember one time I went out to Canyon Point when I was really frustrated with work. And I wouldn't say that's a tradition per se, but I can say that it does put me in a better mind state.
Do you feel like an other being when you go do that? Do you think that's why, or is it just strictly nature is the reason why you're being calmed down, or what's helping you?
It's hard to say. But I feel like with the technology, like technology today, it has a way of disconnecting us from the world. So I think going out there and being a part of nature and breathing like fresh air, not being cooped up in your room, like definitely puts you in a better mind state regardless.
Interestingly enough, this is a very Buddhist practice and idea. The Insight Meditation Center explains that a long tradition in Buddhism is an intimate interaction between nature and people, and the health of people physically is closely tied to the health of the environment. Marron actually alludes to Buddhism as a possible later endeavor in life.
I think that's why I'm interested in maybe like practicing Buddhism or learning more about it in the future. I'm into like philosophy, and a lot of philosophy goes hand in hand with like religion and stuff. So I can see myself studying philosophy in like a college course or like a small psychology class, and then like along with that it comes with like Taoism, Buddhism. I would like to learn more about like more, I would say, Eastern philosophies than anything, like Stoicism or like stuff like that.
Not so much the Western, like traditional American stuff, like Christian Judaism,
No,
like nothing like that. More
I feel like a lot of that is like very cookie cutter, and I'm not really into that.
Another topical debate is the role of religion in people's ability to act ethically. So, is it possible for people to have morals and be ethical without a specific religion or a specific God helping them through the way?
I think you can. I think you can be ethical without some sort of religious backing or like just being any type of Bible or like scripture or anything. As long as you try to not restrict people's freedoms, and whatever you do with your actions, it doesn't affect other people in a negative light or in a negative way, physically, mentally, emotionally. I just say you can do and be whoever you want.
When you're stuck in a tough decision, you don't know what's right, what's wrong, what to do. Like, what do you go back to? Do you go research it online? Do you go talk to certain people? Who's kind of your like help when it comes to ethics?
When it comes to ethics, I feel like everyone's flawed, especially myself. So I try to get it from an outside perspective, but I'm a very private person. So I try to take it to someone I know that will keep it between us confidential. So I usually go to see the Fleet and Family support officer on base here.
The final topic we discussed was Marron's viewpoints on sexual orientation and homosexuality. This was easily the most opinionated Marron was on any of the topics.
I think I agree with biology, like male and female. So I don't agree with when someone says like they're non-binary. But if someone were to say that they were gender fluid, like I'd be like, that's impossible. You can probably be more masculine, and then the other day, or like in another period, like feel more feminine. But I don't think you can say that you're in between or either or. You're either one or the other.
Although Marron has his personal opinions on sexual orientation, he also believes that people with non-traditional genders or homosexualities are important to the world. What do you feel about homosexuality?
I think anybody can be whoever they want to be. I mean, I'm like super into like pop culture and stuff and like science fiction, but like when I think of it, what if we met like another life form? Like, would we give them rights? Like, would we allow our species to like intermingle? Like, would we try to restrict them from like associating with like our species in any bit, like with culture and everything? So it's like, I think about it like if we were in like Star Wars or like Star Trek or something. It's like, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that, I don't know, those like fictional places and worlds and like characters, they all intermingle and it just that's what makes the world like interesting. So I think whether you're gay, bisexual, or straight, like I think you have a place in this world, and it makes the world more interesting.
Marron has no shame in admitting that he struggles with certain parts of being agnostic. This includes sometimes feeling a lack of a sense of meaning in life. Anthropologist Clifford Geertz described religion as a way of giving our individual and collective lives a sense of meaning. Another theory of religion that is applicable is William James's variety of religious experiences theory. James argues that religious experiences are just human experiences. Therefore, there is no difference between religious happiness and general happiness. Marron and agnostics around the world find this to be true, and it is one of the many reasons they choose to have this viewpoint. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Mr. Alfredo Marron. To wrap things up, I learned a lot about agnosticism throughout this interview and research process. I think that some people, including myself before this project, may have had preconceived notions that agnostics were God haters that didn't want anyone to go to church. This couldn't have been farther from the truth. In reality, they're some of the most unjudgmental, unopinionated, peaceful people on the earth. The opinions they do have and actions they do take are usually motivated by individual motives rather than by a group or church mentality. I also learned that Marron and other agnostics can be very open to change in the future. In the middle of the interview, Marron even started talking about Buddhism and why he may practice that down the road. That's not exactly something you would see from a Muslim or a Jewish person or a Christian, Those believers, whether you think this is right or wrong, are usually born into that tradition or religion and will die with that tradition or religion. But agnostics are okay with the fact that their opinion may change in the future or things may come out that force their opinion to change. I think that's very admirable and something we can all incorporate into our daily lives. Thank you for watching.